Hey, welcome back to the Mining Pod. On today's show, we are joined by Max Guise of the Proto team. This is a division of Block focusing on their new Proto ASIC. Max has been a long time Bitcoiner over at Block. He's worked on CashApp, he's worked on Bitkey, and now he's focusing on the Proto ASIC. Thank you to Max for joining the show. In this show, we talk about their new ASIC chip. We actually got a sneak peek of it for the first time ever outside the laboratory, which was awesome. We also talked about the different form factors that they're expecting to roll out based on this chip and their aspirations for bringing a new ASIC to market in 2025. Thank you again to the Proto team for making this happen. And a quick shout out to our sponsors, which you'll hear from in just a moment before we get into the conversation.
Are you a retail or institutional investor interested in Bitcoin mining companies? The Miner Mag brings you free data and analysis from all major NASDAQ-listed Bitcoin mining operations to know who stands out. Check out visualized metrics and data-dependent stories at theminermag.com. Thanks for listening to the Mining Pod. Want more? Subscribe to our main feed on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever else you get your podcasts for another weekly show on Bitcoin stocks. And check out our newsletter at miningpod.blockspace.media today.
Max, welcome to the Mining Pod.
How you doing? And thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us. We are day 2 of the conference, the North American Blockchain Summit, which is a little painful to say because I don't like saying the blockchain part, but it's okay. And I think a lot of people are tired from last night. Just for the audience's knowledge, I don't have a bad voice from drinking last night. It's just from having a cold last week. So don't get too mad at me. Max, we're talking about the Proto Miner, and we had your team on earlier, and we're putting this out in December. So they came on yesterday, and that show would have aired about a month ago. So if you're listening to the show right now, maybe pause, go back and listen to that one. But this show, we're going to talk about the Proto Miner from Block standpoint, why you guys decided to build a Bitcoin ASIC, where we're at today with it, and then what the future vision is for this product, which it's a pretty important piece of infrastructure for Bitcoin. Like mining is very important. Like we have a whole podcast about it, right? So that's important. And then building it is very, very difficult. I mean, we're talking about getting foundry space, designing a chip itself, designing a form factor, selling this into a market that's very competitive. So we have a lot to talk about in the next half hour or so. Can you give us like a little intro before we jump in?
Sure. So I'm Max. I'm working at Block on Proto, our Bitcoin mining initiative. Excited to be here today and to tell you more about what we're up to. And my team is focused on product development, both on mining and actually Bitkey, our Bitcoin wallet as well, and on low-level chip development, which we're going to get into in a moment.
Low-level chip development. We have not really crossed that path on the mining pod before. We've talked about chips. We've had some cool people on. Like you guys are actually working with them on this product, the Epic blockchain team. We've had them on a few times. To my knowledge, I don't do a bunch of stuff with chips, and you can definitely correct me on that. They do more stuff on like control board side of things. But yeah, we've done a few shows around like the insides of the machine, but we don't get too deep. I feel like we might get pretty deep on this one. Your background before Block was government work and in security, and then just computers in general. Can you like lay that out a little bit?
Yeah. So I'm originally an electrical engineer by training, and a lot of math and computer science, and then got into security and got really lucky to come to Block 11 years ago now, and to help ship lots of products across Square and CashApp and Bitkey and now mining.
Yeah.
And to learn from an awesome set of people along the way.
How did you, actually, just tell me about like the products you worked at Block. So I think you mentioned earlier CashApp was first, and then you just moved kind of up as they've developed new Bitcoin products.
Actually, for me, Square was first. So right in 2013 when I joined, we were actually just getting started with CashApp, and really the main focus was on Square and payments hardware, basically helping sellers never miss a sale. And I worked deeply with our hardware team at the time on new chip card readers that we hadn't launched yet, eventually on our Square Register product, which has a buyer and seller facing screen that's kind of like a custom to it.
So you're the guy responsible for the tip feature. Is that right?
I didn't work on the tip feature. I didn't work on that one.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So you made that product. Tell me about like bringing that to market, because they brought that up yesterday when we did the show with Perry from your team about how important it is that Block has had the history of building point of sale products and then distributing them across the globe. So tell me about like yeah, what was it like building that product, and then how do you guys get it out the door?
Yeah, I think the first thing I'd highlight is at the absolute core of all of this is talking to and listening to customers. And so the original genesis of Square came from that, from understanding sellers who were missing sales because they could only accept cash, and their alternative was to go through a huge, confusing network of, you need to get a relationship with this merchant bank, and they need you to get this hardware, and you got to send it here, and tons of hidden fees and complexity and paperwork, and ultimately just not a great product experience. And so at the core of this is really understanding what our customers need and then focusing completely on that. Yeah. And one of the things we think about when doing that is taking on complexity ourselves. So figuring out, we see a customer need, and maybe lots of folks out there haven't solved it because it's hard, and we don't care about that. We take a look at what are our options? How could we possibly get at this internally? And so in the earliest days of Square hardware, thought about that all the time, and thought about that both at a hardware level, at a software level, and at a services level, and created something that was far easier to use and brought a lot of folks into the ecosystem accepting credit cards that had never done that before.
And then you went on to build CashApp, and then Bitkey, and now this unit. And we could honestly spend a lot of time on each one of those things. But I think for me, I'm interested in knowing, like, how does Block incubate these individual products within the company? Because that's definitely unique. Like, a lot of times you think of a startup as like the best place to build something like this. But in this case, you guys are building small teams, making a product around a unified vision. Bitkey, you guys wanted to make the Bitcoin user experience and HODL experience better for people. For mining, you guys are trying to solve a lot of problems, which we'll get into in a little bit. But how do you guys think about like building teams internally for these various things that you guys have worked on?
Yeah. The phrase I'd probably start with here is that we hire, cultivate, and expect deep expertise. It's one of the principles that we have for part of our team. And we really focus on finding people who are just great at their craft. Yeah. And then we do that in a huge range of disciplines. So when we're building something like the point of sale systems we were just talking about, or proto miners, we need people who are, building custom silicon. We need people who are laying out electrical designs for our hash boards. We need people who are working on the embedded Linux stack that runs on the control board. We need people who are building a UI. We need people who understand how to finance products and how to, work with contract manufacturers and make sure that we get consistent quality to our customers. And there's just so many disciplines involved that we really focus on finding experts in all of those crafts and then bringing them together to build something great.
And you guys have the balance sheet to be able to do that because you're a big bank, right?
Yeah, we're very fortunate to have had great success in all the businesses that we're talking about, and which we're obviously excited about Proto in that sense as well. And this is definitely something that stood out for Proto so far. Is we're a U.S. publicly traded company. We have a healthy balance sheet, and we have a long-term commitment to Bitcoin. We're building on Bitcoin for a lot of different reasons at Block. And we want to build an open economy, and whether that's in the CashApp business or Bitkey or proto mining, we have a lot of different reasons to be involved, and that's among the reasons we've gotten involved in proto specifically.
Yeah, there's a cool thing here, and this is actually why I like mining compared to a lot of other parts of Bitcoin. Is mining so practical, and a lot of people in Bitcoin are like, I don't want to work with a bank, I don't want to, and I get it. But, the fact that there's like a very liquid, trusted bank building a machine like this, like, it matters a lot especially for miners. So the few conversations I've had about Proto with, people who actually have Hashrate deployed, that's been one of the things they've actually been interested in, is like the financing options that probably will pop up with Proto. And the fact that it's going to be stable compared to some of these other companies that might not have the balance sheet. I mean, I can think of 2 companies right now that are struggling and have had to go to market to go get more cash to continue developing their ASICs. And that puts a lot of pressure on these Bitcoin miners who have purchased their units already. Is there going to be repairs in the future? Is there going to be spare parts in the future? And for Bitcoin miners, that matters a lot. So we'll get into the financing in a little bit. Let's talk about like the past, 2-3 years, maybe it's longer, of Proto. Like, where did this idea originate? Was it with Jack? Was it with someone else at at Block. How did this all come about?
So this really came from a core strategic thing that we're after at Block, which is building an open economy. And we had chosen to do that on Bitcoin. And, you've seen lots of leadership and direction from Jack on that. And the reason for that is really maps back to decentralization. It maps back to the fact that, Bitcoin isn't controlled by a single person or government or company. And we need that property to exist. And we think that the best way to create a stronger and more resilient network is to help with decentralization. And we see centralization pressures in mining in a lot of different ways, including a monopoly on hardware production. And our observation was really that we're incredibly well positioned to help with this specific problem. And that's because we have three things where many companies have only a subset of them. One is expertise. So our team has shipped tens of millions of devices. And that's not just through the businesses that we're talking about as well. So, or that we talked about previously as well. So it's not just through Square and CashApp and Bitkey and Proto. It's also, lots of the folks that we've hired shipped tens of millions of devices before they came to Block. And so we're very fortunate to have that. The second thing you touched on, which is we have a healthy balance sheet and a lot of credibility. We're a US publicly traded company. We have great supplier relationships, both, from our days at Block and from before. And then the third thing is we have long-term commitment. And this is actually really important because there are companies that have, those first two. And the second things get tough, they're out of the business. They're going to go work on something else. And that's on us.
Today's show is brought to you by Digital Shovel. Digital Shovel is a leading manufacturer of modular mining pods as well as PDUs and switchgears. Unlike many other competitors, their product is designed and manufactured in North America with a complete UL inspection on the entire unit, not just individual components. Additionally, Digital Shovel is one of the most vertically integrated manufacturers of over 75,000 square feet of sheet metal shop, SMT and wave solder PCB assembly, as well as final assembly all under one roof in Toronto, Canada. Their price point leads the industry when compared to products with rates as low as $69,000 per megawatt for a complete data center with smart PDUs and switchgears. To learn more, visit digitalshovel.com.
For the announcement, I think it was like 3 years ago, there was a blog post about the MDK, right?
Pretty close. Yeah.
Pretty close. Okay. And that was the first announcement of this kind of product, right? Or is it,
Yeah. And in addition, it was really before we got started. So one of the things that we've done with this that's really unique is we're developing openly. This is something that is actually new even for lots of us because, historically in a lot of conventional product development, it's pretty unusual to talk about things, long before you've launched them. And it's actually a really important property to us. It's one of the things that we want to bring to, everything that we're doing.
Yeah.
And that means, sharing more about what we're working on. It means sharing more and providing more access to different parts of our stack and different tools.
Yeah.
Things like extremely clear APIs for our software and great documentation around them.
Yeah.
Things like publishing code on GitHub and that sort of thing. And so that was part of kind of the initial beginning of this effort.
Yeah.
Which was about 3 years ago.
And then since then, you guys have been acquiring team members. I mean, you guys picked up Perry, who was at Argo. I'm not sure where Thomas was at. And then you picked up Vincent, who's been at a few different places. Tell me a little bit more about the mining team. Those are the people I know because they're a little more forward facing, but I'm sure there's like tons of people behind the seats.
Yeah. In reality, we have a lot of folks who've both come from internally and externally. So we've brought people over who, built fantastic hardware that's running in Square Register and Square Terminal. We brought people over who've, helped develop mobile applications for CashApp. We've brought people over really from lots of different parts of the company. This is a strength of Block. We get to draw from the best. And then we brought a lot of people in externally as well. So even though we've got a ton of experience in hardware system development, this is the first time that Block is getting involved in Bitcoin mining and Bitcoin mining hardware production. And so we also looked externally and brought lots of folks in, like some of the folks that you mentioned. And we're continuing to do that. So talented people out there who are listening or watching this pod should definitely come talk to us.
Okay, so now we're at NABS, and you guys are definitely here in force, talking to different people, figuring out what that looks like. what's the go-to-market strategy for the product for Proto?
Yeah, I think maybe I'll back up for just a moment and talk a little bit about what Proto is. So, we're working to decentralize mining and to increase access to tools for mining operators and for builders, regardless of their size, regardless of where they are in the world. And there are three things that we're building. Okay. The first is chips. So, at the absolute core of the miner, the silicon, or we actually often use the term ASIC, application-specific integrated circuit, to refer specifically to the chip, where in this case, the application is lots of SHA-256 hashing for mining. And one of the new paradigms here is that we're going to offer that directly to customers. I think some listeners might already know that we've announced a partnership with Core Scientific, and that's our first customer for these chips. But we're planning to make them accessible to lots more as well. The second thing is rigs or mining systems. The systems that many folks are used to and familiar with, where you can pack a bunch of silicon into hashboards, a number of hashboards into a system, provide some control logic and cooling solutions. And then the third thing is software. And I'm excited about this one. I think we have a ton of opportunity to help people more easily set up their miners, help people understand what breaks, understand how to fix it, and perhaps most importantly, a whole suite of features to help make sure they get the most out of their hardware.
For the chip, we can show that to people. So we'll put up another photo on screen, but we got one here. So first time out of the lab, right? That's what I was told.
That sounds about right.
Sounds about right. It's pretty remarkable, and you guys can't confirm who the founder was, so we'll gloss over that. But the interesting thing about it is you guys got like the little laser logo on there, so that's cool. And you guys are turning those things out. So in terms of people purchasing individual chips, what does that look like? If people want to come and buy them and make their own ASIC, how do you guys sort of sell that, or how do people go about buying those things?
Yeah, so the typical thing that we need to provide to folks who are interested in chips is a technical package that helps them understand how to use it and how they would use it in a design. And so that's everything from a data sheet to usually reference designs that show different ways you can use this in electrical design. Application notes that talk about everything from performance to the kinds of things you can enable with it, and then very often evaluation hardware. And this is actually you might be familiar with our mining development kit. Yeah. And this is actually one of the things that we want to do with the mining development kit is help enable silicon sales and help people understand what they could do with this. This is important to us because part of our mission is to decentralize mining, and we're really excited about not just becoming a great hardware supplier and being able to provide chips and rigs and software to people who are already in the mining business, but helping to enable new applications. And so these are things like heat reuse. Yeah. So, low cost energy is a critical component of mining. And, if you're about to use energy anyway to heat a residential or commercial space, it's a great opportunity to mine and use the heat that's a byproduct of mining. And, there are some interesting efforts out there today on this, but it's not really a market or industry yet. And it's something that we hope to enable by providing easier access for those builders to silicon. Yeah. And then the second thing is something I'll refer to as stranded energy. So we're really excited long-term about Bitcoin mining as basically a monetization mechanism to get new infrastructure built, to help subsidize power where there's over-provision infrastructure that already exists, and to help with things like grid stabilization by providing a monetization mechanism for over-provisioning an energy system right up front.
In the competitive world of Bitcoin mining, one name stands out: CleanSpark, America's Bitcoin miner. At CleanSpark, efficiency isn't just a goal, it's our standard. Our sophisticated facilities are built and led by expert teams who care about Bitcoin and the communities we work in. Scale, we've mastered it. Our large-scale operations have set us apart in the industry as examples of community-oriented building. Our track record speaks for itself. We navigate the complexities of the new economy with precision and with skill, continuously achieving operational milestones. Curious about how we do it? We invite you to discover the story behind CleanSpark's success at cleanspark.com.
We had the Ocean guys on in July, and one of the things they talked about was how Bitmain had taken code that Luke Dasher had published 10 years ago at this point and used that code and then like put it on a wall and no one could use it. And that's been sort of like the story for a lot of ASICs out there, is if you want to use firmware, you have to go purchase it and there's a dev fee. If you want to crack open Bitmain, then you lose your warranty. Like you can't really get into the software side of things. So tell me a little bit about that software side of things, why you guys are putting this publicly. What's the advantage for you guys in doing that compared to the historic norm of keeping these things behind walled gardens?
Mm-hmm. A big part of it maps back to enabling new applications. Yeah, we want to make it as easy as possible for people to build. And, you know, if step one is reverse engineer how this works, like that's going to get in people's way. And so, you know, we want step one to be engaged with extremely high quality documentation and folks on our team who are happy to help and get people, you know, focused on the kernel of what they're really trying to solve. And sharing more is going to help with that. Yeah. In addition, on the firmware side, we want to make sure that people don't have to go after third-party firmware. We want to listen to customers, build what they need, and have something that just works out of the box for them.
Okay. So you want this unit, you don't have to use third-party firmware at all.
Yeah. Now, you should be able to choose to do that if you want to, but we want to solve customer problems to a degree that you don't need to.
What other portions of this are going to be open source that you think are important or different from the rest of the mining industry's historic norms? I'd say like maybe like the rig itself, like the different parts that are on there. Maybe there's things with the hash board itself. I know like sometimes when you're doing the repairs, they put a lot of like the manuals and how to do these things behind walls again. But yeah, what are some things you guys are looking at open sourcing that's different from the norms in the ASIC industry?
Yeah. As we've talked to customers, one of the core things that we've focused on is something I'll refer to as total cost of ownership. And, you know, what I'm getting at here is that whether or not you can mine profitably is not just about one number. It's actually about a whole suite of factors. And some of those factors are performance related, how efficient a machine is or how much it costs up front. A lot of those factors are also about how many hash rate hours you actually get out of the machine in practice. Yeah. And the things that contribute to that. How difficult it is to repair, how often things break, which components it is that are breaking, how you get spare parts, how much time and effort and ultimately dollars you have to pour into that. Payment terms, how much money you have to put down and when, and what flexibility that might or might not give you in the rest of your operations. And so we're thinking about that whole suite. And there are lots of places within that where being more open will be extremely helpful, whether it's proactive notifications that, you know, help you understand what's broken and lead you directly to where you can order a spare part directly from us. Or if it's, you know, providing documentation or, you know, for example, customer support is another example of something that throughout our history at Block, we have a ton of experience building and operating and making sure we can help customers with.
In terms of like going to market with this, how do you guys make this an attractive purchase for people who have, one, been burned by new manufacturers over and over again, and two, are very cozy with their relationships with current ASIC providers? Like what's the strategy you guys are trying to hit on?
One of the things that we've seen is that a lot of people aren't all that cozy. A lot of people are actually really excited and interested to have credible new manufacturers add new options for them. They think competition is good. So do we, by the way. Yeah. And we think there's a ton of opportunity to, you know, get started with a lot of different new customers on this. When we are, you know, pitching to customers, a big part of what I'd focus on is that we've been listening to people at, you know, every function and layer of the mining operator stack, and trying to help solve problems for them. And that's going to show up in every aspect of total cost of ownership with what we bring to market.
Is there a financing part to this for Bitcoin miners?
Yeah, so we're still working through exactly how we're approaching this, but we are absolutely in a position to help with flexible payment terms. Yeah. And it's certainly something we've heard from miners. If they need to, you know, pay too much too early, and they're also trying to build out infrastructure and get all the rest of their ducks in a row to mine Bitcoin profitably, it can take a lot of flexibility away from them.
Yeah.
And it's something we're thinking about. We have a lot of different ways to get at, and I think we're going to be able to really help with.
Would Block, and this might be way too specific, but it does happen. Would Block ever take Bitcoin from units that they, like if someone ordered a bunch of units and plugged them in and wasn't able to pay, would you guys take Hashrate in payment for something like that ever?
I can't talk specifically about the roadmap here, but maybe I'll draw an analogy from other things that we've done at Block. One of the products that we introduced on the Square side is called Square Capital. And what we realized is that we were in a position to understand merchants' businesses, so people using Square point of sale systems, who were thinking about doing things like building a second location or expanding their current operations, renovating a kitchen.
Yep.
And we found that we could help restaurants do things like that, and we could help other businesses do things like that by lending and give them really flexible ways to pay back, like as a portion of sales, for example.
Yeah.
And it's something that our sellers really appreciated in that setting. And there's a bunch of different paradigms like that that we're considering in this space as well.
Okay. So TBD. We'll find out more. If you're a Bitcoin miner, you might already know a little bit more. What's next for you guys? I mean, where are we going here? And I don't want to rush too much. So if we need to stick around like the current roadmap a little more, feel free. But I'm curious, like, where do you think this is going to be deployed? What do you think, where some configurations you're maybe interested in? Where I'll leave it open to you to kind of talk about that, because I think there's some interesting stuff that we could see developed on the manufacturing side. The core podcast we did, really interesting to think about like the ways that they're going to integrate this product into their facilities and into the specific designs, the rigs they want to build. Is that something you're excited about, or is there anything on that side that you can talk about?
Yeah. I'm really excited that we're bringing both chips and rigs to market next year. And so on sort of the chip side, one of the things I'm really excited about is that people have a lot of great ideas.
Yeah.
And I'm excited for us to help enable those. One of the things that happens when we launch new products is there are lots of people who use them in ways we actually weren't expecting. Like maybe we thought of a lot of things internally, but not that one.
Yeah.
I think that's awesome to see, and I think we're going to see a ton of that when we have chips out there that people can start building with. So that's one. And then on the rig side, I'm really excited that we're talking with operators that are a huge range of sizes. Yeah. Folks who are much smaller operations, from a couple of miners or tens of miners to large operations as well, and seeing how they gain value from our rigs next year is something I'm really excited for. And it really comes back to that, that blend of, not just performance, but reliability, and being able to show people, how that plays out in practice. Serviceability. We've heard from so many repair techs and folks that are working on their own miners that there's just a ton of room to help them do their job more easily. And just really excited to see how this works for our customers in practice.
Do you guys have an announcement date for the one that you guys want to put out for your own Block rig?
I don't have a date, but you'll see it in market next year.
Okay. Any sneak peeks on what that form factor is going to look like?
Yeah. I can't talk about the industrial design.
Yeah.
But I can tell you that one of the rigs that you'll see next year is going to fit in people's existing infrastructure quite well.
Okay, cool. In terms of like the greater landscape for Proto, what are some other things that you guys are looking at for next year? So chip out, rig out. Is there anything else that you guys are like looking to maybe launch like next year, or like what does like the roadmap look like from here? One specific with that question is like, how does this fit into like the greater ecosystem that you guys have with CashApp, with Bitkey? Is there anything around like a unified product there?
There's certainly opportunities to connect lots of things that we're doing at Block. Really obvious one here is that, folks producing Bitcoin might need a place to store it.
Yep.
And Bitkey is an excellent place to store Bitcoin. So definitely some potential there. But a lot of our focus on Proto really is on mining specifically right now. Yeah. And so, the other kinds of things that are top of mind for us next year are related to things like how far we can take our software enablement. I mentioned earlier trying to help miners get the most out of their hardware.
Yeah.
We think there's a ton of surface area there to really optimize how mining systems work, to show miners how that's happening, and ultimately to help them not have to take the wheel quite as much as they do today when they're trying to get the most out of their hardware.
Is there other parts of mining infrastructure you guys would ever build? Like control boards, PSUs, infrastructure on the mining level, like containers, things like that?
So we're actually building control boards, and so the rigs that we're building, like they'll have a custom control board in there from Block. Containers, larger infrastructure. That's not a focus for us right now, but there are a lot of different ways we can serve miners over the years, and if folks are interested in that, they should definitely come talk to us.
Okay. Last bit I want to touch on is like you guys had this Core Scientific announcement that came out in July, 15 exahash, and it's like a middle of the road announcement is what they said when we talk with Core. Like, might be more than that, might be less, but we work at 15 exahash of chips, so we'll see what we squeeze out of them. Any other miners that you guys are courting, and how do you guys think about working with multiple partners? These guys are obviously a little more competitive. Like, they're all pubcos and they're competing for shareholder dollars. So how do you guys think about working with everyone else?
Yeah. We're interested in working with lots of different partners. Yeah. And we're lucky to have interest from lots of different partners. And everybody brings something unique to the table. And so usually what we're focused on is to find those really awesome overlaps where there's something we're uniquely interested in. And we're open in every one of these conversations. Sometimes the best thing we can do is provide something we're already building. Other times it's to partner on developing something new. And we've got an awesome team that's, engaging with these folks. And I think you're absolutely going to see, other partners in the mix soon.
Okay. Announcements soon. Anything else as we close out here? Anything we didn't touch on? You think it's important for listeners or prospective buyers of Proto to know about the new unit in the chip?
Yeah, I think the thing I'd highlight is actually about Proto in general. Yeah. Which is we're in this to decentralize mining and increase access and to tools for mining operators. And we need to hear from people to make sure that we do that as best as we possibly can.
Yeah.
And so as we share information, as we publish things online, as we make product announcements, we want to hear from you. Yeah. And so, reach out to us. You can email us at mining@block.xyz or, DM any of us on Twitter. And a big part of how we got here is by listening to people and building what they need. So come tell us.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining the show. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.